California's Golden Parks is made possible by Toyota, who is committed to keeping the air clean at all our beautiful parks with its hybrid Synergy Drive technology. In vehicles like the innovative Prius, Highlander Hybrid, and the Camry Hybrid. Lower emissions and higher gas mileage help hybrid Synergy Drive vehicles create a minimal impact on the environment. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy another one of California's Golden Parks.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell, and it is a beautiful day. We're in San Francisco looking out at the bay. There's the Bay Bridge off in the distance, and we are heading to one of my favorite places in the entire state of California. This is a true California icon. And in case you don't recognize it already, of course, we're talking about Alcatraz. People come here from all over the world to visit this island. Now, over the years, Alcatraz has been nicknamed the Rock by the prisoners who spent time out there. And truth of the matter is, Alcatraz is kind of a, well, it is a rock, and it's gray and foreboding and kind of ominous. Usually it's shrouded in fog, but we're gonna spend the day in search of another Alcatraz. An Alcatraz that's beautiful and fragrant and magnificent and natural. And if you're wondering what in the world we're talking about, you're invited to come along with us on this adventure. We're going to be spending the whole day on beautiful, fragrant, magnificent Alcatraz, which is definitely one of California's golden parks. Okay, as we begin our Alcatraz adventure, we are looking at the skyline of San Francisco across the bay here from Alcatraz itself. Rich, this is the best view of San Francisco that you can find.
This is the best view from any federal prison in the United States.
The prisoners loved this view, didn't they?
Prisoners loved it. The families who lived out here loved it. Families of the officers, the guards loved it. It's spectacular.
I have a feeling the guards loved it more than the prisoners loved it, but that's a whole nother
Definitely
issue,
they did. They could leave.
All right, now we're walking over here, and this is kind of the Alcatraz that I had described earlier. First off, Alcatraz is built on a rock, isn't it?
It's a solid rock sitting in the middle of San Francisco Bay with 300 feet of water surrounding the island, 300 feet deep.
So it really is the rock.
The rock in the middle of San Francisco Bay.
I also described it as gray and dull and foreboding and ominous. This was not a pleasant place, was it?
Well, it wasn't for the prisoners, but it was spectacularly beautiful gardens for the families that lived on Alcatraz, the families of the correctional officers. It was beauty in the middle of a desolate island.
Now, see, you gave away our beauty thing. Here we are. You're talking about the gardens, and that's what we're here to see. Explain to us about the gardens of Alcatraz, because that's what we meant when we said we're coming over for beauty, fragrance, and natural wonders.
The gardens were planted in the 1860s by the military families and tended by the military families, the military prisoners, and by the federal prisoners themselves out here on the island. So it's a little piece of Alcatraz a lot of people don't know about.
So from the earliest days when Alcatraz was a fort, there were gardens out here.
There were gardens out here. Families of the officers used to bring out clippings from the other military posts they were stationed at. They would plant them out here, and because of the Mediterranean climate of San Francisco, almost anything would grow in Alcatraz.
And these gardens were maintained all the way through the prison years of Alcatraz.
They were maintained for almost a century on the island, and when the prison closed in 1963, they fell to disrepair.
They fell into disrepair, but the good news is the gardens are returning to Alcatraz, and that's what this adventure is all about. We're searching out the beauty and the wonder and the fragrance of the gardens here on the rock. We're starting the garden tour, and to go on this tour, Rich has outfitted me. He took me to the gift store, and I'm wearing a hat to protect myself against this sun. I thought it was going to be foggy. This is spectacular out here today, but this just isn't any old hat I'm wearing, is it, Rich?
No, Huell, it's a replica prisoner hat, and when the prisoners were working on the gardens in the federal prison days, they would have worn an identical hat. In fact, they looked a lot like you do.
Wow, what do you mean by that?
No comment, Huell.
All right, so I've got the hat on. This is what the prisoners would have worn when they were working in the gardens.
Exactly.
And to start our garden tour, we're going to hook up with, your name is?
Corolla Ashford.
Okay, we're standing here as the tourists go by. We're standing here in front of our first bit of beauty and fragrance. And you're the lady who can tell us all about it because you're in charge of this whole project.
I am. I'm the project manager for the garden restoration project.
Now, tell us a little bit about this garden. Why did they have gardens on Alcatraz?
Well, Alcatraz was originally a fort, and as the military does, it wants to greet the visitor at their fort with gardens, and so the main road had beds all the way up to the top summit at the Citadel. These beds have been in existence since this island's development.
In the mid-1800s?
Yeah, right.
Now, why were they shaped like this? Let's walk up here. Were they just taking advantage of any little space they had?
Well, they were taking advantage of any little soil they had, and as the soil came on the island, because it was originally rock, the little places where they could spare soil, residents, military families, and also military prisoners would fill in those areas with bright, colorful flowers to bring, a spark to a very gray environment.
Absolutely. Now, is this the original soil we're looking at right here? Did you have to bring in new soil?
No, we only brought in amendments to the soil that we felt was probably fairly inert.
So this is the historic soil right here.
This is.
That was all shipped over here because there wasn't much soil here.
None. No, there was no soil here.
And is this historically correct, what we're looking at right here? Are these all the kinds of plants that would have been here back then?
We have the charge to bring about the look and the feel of what was here historically. We have pictures of this plant on this slope, cascading down.
This one right here?
No, this little ground cover is a small ice plant, Chrysanthemum. And in fact, this is the signature plant of Alcatraz. The residents called it the Persian carpet, and it has a very bright pink flower.
Right over here.
Cascaded down on the west side, so San Francisco saw it. Yeah, there's a few in bloom. So we have replanted this. Originally, when we got here a couple of years ago, it was just blackberry, honeysuckle.
It had grown over.
Totally.
Now, Corolla, walking up the rock and looking back behind us, I see a huge eucalyptus, some Monterey cypress, and these look like old trees.
They are old. And we believe that they came here in some of these original cypress and eucalyptus came in 1924 with a beautification effort from the San Francisco Wildflower and Beautification
excuse me. So they had a beautification movement to beautify Alcatraz?
It was actually kind of an eyesore for San Francisco to have a prison here.
Yeah.
And so Alcatraz tried to make this effort, as did the community, to placate the San Francisco community.
Kind of
and that's
spruce up the rock.
Spruce up the vista,
Look at these. These are huge.
Now, some of these are volunteers. We did a tree conditions and age assessment, and we know which ones are original and which ones are not.
So you have assessed every single plant and tree.
Well, the trees we know these are only 30 years old. Can you believe that? Yeah. They were cored by UC Berkeley, and we know that they are not historical.
Wow. And this, of course, these were not considered gardens.
No.
This was here just for either fill or to keep the
erosion control. It really was, yeah.
And here's a garden. I recognize these gardens now because they're just these little slivers right here. Here's another sliver. What are we looking at right here?
Well, this is, as you say, just a sliver of a garden, but it was for beauty as people progressed up the hill to the Citadel and later to the Cell House, that there would be something here that, you know, pleased the eye.
Is this significant in any
now,
way?
This is my favorite plant. It's, yeah, look at it. It's got thorns front and back all over it. It's a Solana marginatum. It's part of the tomato family.
Look at these. I've never seen a plant like this.
And we had these on the west side, 2 of them, but the visitors never got to see them because it was way off of the visitor trail. And then this volunteered itself here, so it wasn't in my planting plan, but we've left it.
Is this original to the way it would have been?
Yeah. Well, I don't think that there would have been a Solana marginatum in this bed.
No, but on Alcatraz itself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there are 2 of them that are original.
I've never, look at this. I've never seen anything like this. They're stickers, thorns.
Vicious.
On both sides.
It's like an evil plant.
Wow.
And it has yellow fruit that we pick off because it's highly poisonous. So we don't want the visitors to pick them off. We take them off ourselves.
Corolla's excited.
Well, this is one of the original trees, a 100-year-old tree that was planted 100 years ago, and the others are volunteers, but this is one of the oldest ones on the island.
Boy, look at this. This really says it more than anything. I've never, you know, I've been to Alcatraz several times. I've never really noticed the foliage and the trees before and the way they interact with the water tower and the prison over here and the smokestack down there. It all kind of fits together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really marvelous that way. I think that it's coming more into focus the more work that gets done on the landscape itself.
Yeah, people are beginning to notice it again.
They really are, yeah.
And look at this. This is a whole big, long...
330 feet of trough planter that was built in the penitentiary era above the military era's stone wall, and it was just empty when we started, and it was our first rehabilitation. We put 330 ivy leaf geraniums in because we had photos all the way up. We had photos that that's what was here in the 40s.
Isn't this amazing that they would go to the detail of filling in this wall with flowers all the way to the top?
Yeah, all the way to the medical officer's home.
Now wait a minute. Now that looks like a real garden down there.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you think so.
What is that?
It is a cutting garden representing the cutting gardens that were here when these were homes. See the foundation here with the brick wall and the window in it?
Right down here.
And this was a terrace garden next to the home.
What's he working on down there?
He's building a little hothouse for us that was there when we started.
So can we go down here and see this?
We can. We will go down this way.
Wow, now it's getting... Well, I've been interested, but now I'm really getting interested.
When people got the foundations freed up to garden, they did exactly that. All residents and inmates started gardening the foundation areas of the homes that came down. It was felt that this was too dangerous a place in the penitentiary era for the highest ranking guards and their families to be right next to the cell house.
So they tore down the original military housing and put up gardens.
They put in gardens.
Now we're meeting a very important person here on Alcatraz. I don't want to step in your garden. You got to come to me. I don't want to get in there and get on your wrong side. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Sheila Fritz, the gardener for Alcatraz.
You are the official Alcatraz gardener.
Yes, I am.
And what does that mean?
It means I get the opportunity to work with the Garden Conservancy in rehabilitating the gardens that were historically here.
Now, what was here? How do you know what was here and what you're going to plant and what this is going to look like? Because now this is spectacular looking up here.
Thank you. We have a lot of photographs, historic photographs from the penitentiary area of what was planted here. So we go on those photographs and kind of determine what to plant. But this and what we're standing in was the foundation of one of the Victorian homes. And this was a cutting garden, and they wanted, you know, lots of color to brighten up their dreary days here. These gardens were gardened by the officers' wives and their families, and then in the foundations it was the medical officer's wife, Mrs. Casey.
All right, now I want to get this straight. Originally, houses were here back during the military days, back in the 1800s. Then when it became a prison, these houses were torn down, and they planted these gardens in the foundation areas of the old officers' housing.
Right, yeah. In 1941, these two homes, they left the third one, but these two homes came down because the officers and their families were living too close to the cell house, which is right above us.
Yeah, because look, there's the cell house.
So very
so
close.
The prisoners could have looked out and seen these gardens down here.
Exactly, yeah. Very few privileged inmates got to work in the gardens, but they were trusted people, and we have a few photographs of them standing in the gardens.
That would have been a big deal to come out and work in the gardens.
Yeah, and it still is. The volunteers love working out here.
Now, the flowers grow well up here. Is this a good place to have a garden?
Yeah, other than there being no natural source of water on the island.
Well, there's your water right there.
Yeah, all the water comes in on the ferry, but we've chosen plants that do well in a Mediterranean sort of climate. So they need the winter rains, which comes naturally, and dry summers.
Are these roses over here?
Yes, they are.
Wow! Would they have had a lot of roses here on Alcatraz?
Victorians loved the roses here, so there are quite a few. These are Cecilia Bruners, and these are the Mutabilis roses. And
wow, this is just beautiful, the way this is terraced.
Yeah.
You've got flowers here, you've got flowers up on the next level, you've got the planters in the middle of the wall up here. So there was a lot going on here.
There was, yeah, and this is just one area of the gardens. The whole west side was gardened as well. But these were the, you know, really bright colored flowers for the officers and their families.
Look how thick this is down here. What is all this about down here?
Well, a lot of this is figs that the birds have brought from one original fig tree that a prisoner planted. We're coming into the prisoner garden area here, where this whole west side was developed by prisoners. They brought the dirt from the kitchen by composting kitchen scraps and terraced it, and this really has been developed by them.
Boy, there are a lot of gulls here.
Aren't there, though? This is just the tail end of nesting season. Some of our garden areas are closed to us for 8 months of the year because of nesting.
But when you're out here gardening, don't you have to worry about being dive bombed?
Well, we're not allowed on the west side of the road right now.
But I mean, aren't there droppings?
Oh, well, yes, there are. Yes, we've had, I believe Sheila's fine.
What?
My dad was out visiting and he got hit fairly bad.
So I'm wearing my prisoner's hat. That's why the prisoners wore the hats.
And our volunteers also.
They learn quickly, don't they? Yeah. All right, so this was one of the original fig trees that the prisoners of Alcatraz.
Yes, some of these figs back here, and this is a Metrosideros, which is a beautiful tree that, again, you can see from San Francisco.
How old is this tree?
This is old. This is
50 years old?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So this really
60.
would have been planted by the prisoners.
Yeah.
And all of this is just thick.
Overgrown.
What are you going to do with all of this?
Well, this was not a garden, really. It was from this lamppost on, it was a lawn. And I don't think...
This was a lawn?
On this side of the road and the right side of the road. And we will not reestablish a lawn just for... we're looking for replanting sustainable gardens, and watering is a great issue out here.
Boy,
but,
this is a... Well, it's got its own beauty to it.
Oh, you should see it in the spring. It's gorgeous. These little edgings, we're going to replant. These were perennial borders on both sides, and the edges are still here, and we'll replant that.
So all of this right out here will be replanted?
Yes.
This will just remain raw land out here?
So far, we think so.
And there's another fig tree. I'm learning my trees.
Figs, and probably figs on it, and there's another Metrosideros. Yeah, and we've got some pelargoniums here that are this is the original variety.
This is beautiful.
There are egrets back in there and black-crowned night herons.
And is this, I don't know my flowers.
This is an Acanthus mollis at the end of its season. It's a perfect plant for Alcatraz. It has big leaves. It has these stalks that come up, and then it dies down, and we clear this away, and comes up again.
And here is your little display here. Are these prisoners?
Yes. Yes.
Standing about right here.
We believe that they are standing on this lawn area, yeah.
And look, the picture has been hit by bird droppings.
I'm afraid so.
Which is also historically correct.
Well, they didn't have birds out here, actually, when the prisons were here. They did not let gulls be out here at all. They shot them or...
Why?
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to be dropped on.
They were looking out for the prisoners.
Yeah.
And the staff.
Well, there's residents here, too. No, they did not have gulls out here, or the nesting herons or egrets, none of that.
Boy, the prisoners left, and right away the gulls moved in, didn't they?
They did. I'm afraid they did.
Now, look, I'm just looking right up here at the prison, and this beautiful bluff here, you see the rock. Boy, it was just a rock. It is just a rock. And then all of this vegetation just kind of hanging there.
Yeah, but if you had seen this in the federal prison days, it was manicured. There was no place an inmate, if they tried to escape, could hide. The vegetation was manicured everywhere.
So they wouldn't have wanted vegetation because of escape.
It was, and if they had it planted, it was cut back so severely. The island was immaculate when this was a federal prison.
So this has all grown out since the 70s.
Exactly. From 1963 on, this has been completely wild. Now, Huell, we're walking through a chain-link fence gate, and this is the delineation where the family stopped, and nothing but inmates and officers were in this area of the gardens.
So this was off limits to civilians and families and all of that?
Yes, Huell, only the prisoners and the correctional officers who oversaw their work were in this beautiful little garden area.
And our gardeners are standing down here for a reason.
We're admiring the apple crop. It's pretty good this year, yeah, because we pruned the trees. Yeah.
Now, would they have made apple cider? Would they have harvested apples here on the island?
I don't know what those are some of the questions we don't know, what the prisoners were allowed to do. I know that they did cut flowers, gladiolas, things that look nice in bouquets, and they would then get them down to the dock, and the families could choose bouquets for their apartments.
Well, the prisoners, though, couldn't take flowers back into their cells.
Yeah, actually, they did.
Did they?
Yeah, we'll show you the route that the prisoners took to work to the laundry building. And then on their way back, at the end of the day, we're told that those who cared would take a posy, and they'd have to sacrifice their drinking water in order to have it in their cell. But they would, and then they'd take a lot of, ribbing for.
Yeah, those were the kinder, gentler prisoners.
I believe
those who loved flowers, the finer things in life.
That's right.
Did they ever grow vegetables out here?
No, vegetables. The fruit trees are here. The walnuts, the apples.
What is this tree?
That's a walnut.
So they had a walnut tree here.
2 walnuts and
2 walnuts.
Yeah, 2 apples.
2 apples. And what is this foundation here?
That's the greenhouse that Elliot Michener built. It was absolutely a showplace with these paths and these flowers on every side.
There was a greenhouse here. Who was Elliot Michener?
He was number 578, I believe. He was
a prisoner.
Yeah.
Built a greenhouse.
Yes. Yes. And he tells that every gardener he knows of who was out gardening actually started gardening because they wanted to escape and find an escape route. But in the end, he became a fine horticulturalist, and so did some other prisoners.
Did they take that skill with them when they left the island?
They did, and they used it. That was their livelihood, yeah.
See, there's some great human stories.
Yeah.
We've been concentrating just on the flowers themselves, but the interaction between the flowers and the prisoners,
right.
That's a great story.
It is. That is the story. It's like the life outside of the cell house that kind of healed some of these prisoners in a way that they couldn't inside the cell house.
Now we've come to the exact spot. This is where, what was his name again, the prisoner?
Elliot Michener.
Elliot Michener, you tell me his garden covered this hillside.
He did. He had the small, you see the small chrysanthemum coming down. He had other things in here. Some still remain. He had perennials all in here with a little bird bath that he built out of concrete and wire.
Right over here.
Yeah, and the inmates would file down here every morning. If you had the privilege of a job, you probably worked in the laundry building. You'd come down these stairs, go through the metal detector, go through all this landscape area with the bird bath, go down the next set of stairs to work, and then same coming home. So it meant something. I mean, it was only for them. Nobody else came here. It was just the prisoners who saw this. And we know that it meant something to some of them, because one of the prisoners actually did watercolors in his cell of the gardens that he walked through every day. He was released. He had a life of his own outside of prison, and when he passed away, his family found the watercolors in the attic, and they didn't even know he had been to Alcatraz, and they came back to the museum here at the park.
The prisoner, they didn't even know he had been on Alcatraz.
No, and they found these watercolors of Alcatraz inside the prison with the gardens inside. So
the human stories. Yeah. You know, I love the gardens, and I love what you're doing with the gardens, but it's really so much more than just the plants themselves.
It is. It's a legacy that not only the military left to the Bureau of Prisons, and one person in particular, Fred Reichel, the secretary to the first warden, felt this huge, responsibility to keep this legacy alive, and he became a horticulturalist, and now we're trying to bring it back from what he kept alive and other prisoners who worked them.
What a wonderful thing that's happening here. Congratulations. Congratulations. Let's just stand here. Well, first off, let's look at what the prisoners would have seen looking right out at the Golden Gate Bridge on this magnificent day here in San Francisco out on the bay. But then let's end up over here, because this is where the real story took place, right here on this hillside. Elliot Michener's garden, and all the hopes and the dreams that this garden represented over the years. It's being restored. And when you visit Alcatraz in the future, people from all over California and all over the world will be able to enjoy this garden legacy thanks to this restoration project. We have had an absolutely wonderful day here on the Rock, which is definitely one of California's golden parks. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I certainly hope you enjoyed our visit to the Rock as we watched those beautiful historic gardens being restored. If you'd like to go on this adventure again, share it with family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library. It's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727. and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.
This presentation of California's Golden Parks was made possible by Toyota, who wants you to get out and see these incredible parks for yourself. Toyota is committed to preserving their natural beauty with its hybrid synergy drive technology in vehicles like the Prius, Highlander Hybrid, and Camry Hybrid. Lower emissions and higher gas mileage help hybrid synergy drive vehicles have a minimal impact on our natural wonders. We'll see you next time on California's Golden Parks.
What a wonderful story. The restoration of those historic, beautiful gardens on Alcatraz Island. And of course, our state is filled with beautiful historic gardens, including some gardens right here in Southern California in Pasadena. Now, at one time, everybody knew about these gardens. They were a household word. But today, they're almost forgotten. They're very obscure. They have literally slipped through the cracks of history. But we have discovered what remains of these gardens. And that's what this adventure is all about. We're heading to Pasadena to visit the original Busch Gardens. Enjoy. California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Search of the Busch Gardens has begun, and we are starting it here at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery in Van Nuys. And we are standing right in the middle of this huge brewery here. Dennis, you know why we're here. We're in search of the Busch Gardens. Where are they?
I'll tell you, the Busch Gardens that used to be at this facility was dismantled in the late 70s. In 79, the last boulder was taken down, and much of the facility was transferred to our Tampa, Florida facility and Williamsburg facility.
So the Busch Gardens that we knew and loved, that a lot of people knew and loved, are gone. They're not here anymore.
That's correct. We have a big brewery here now.
All right, but there is one thing left. We've been looking around to try to find any artifacts, and there is one thing left.
Yeah, right behind us here is the original infrastructure of the monorail that took our guests throughout the facility. We now use this for product transferring from the brewing facility to the packaging facility.
So this was the old monorail that was part of the Busch Garden.
That's correct, the monorail railing.
Now, do you think most of your employees out here these days know or remember what used to be right here?
I think they do. Most of our employees, or the average age is around 45, and it was still in operation when our employees were here. And many of them miss it as well.
With fond memories.
Fond memories.
All right, come on in here, Ray. Stay here for a minute with us, Dennis, because this is important. You're kind of our link to the past, because you used to come to Busch Gardens along with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people from all over the world. What was it like to come here?
We were Easterners who moved to Pasadena in '72, and we were thrilled to be able to come to Busch Gardens here in Van Nuys with my little baby son, who was about 5-6 months old, in a stroller.
What was it like here?
I want to tell you, it was like a paradise. It was like walking into an aviary with herons and exotic birds flying above you. There was a boat ride that took you through. We had a terrace where we could look down upon beautiful horticulture that was here.
So it really wasn't an amusement park. It was like a huge, beautiful garden with all these exotic plants and trees and birds.
That's the best way to describe it. It's not like having dolphins jump up out of the pool and a train ride and roller coasters. None of that was here. It was a place where you could come to a serene, totally serene afternoon, bring your family and enjoy the beauty of Busch Gardens.
Now, do you remember the old monorail that was right here?
We took the monorail every time because my son would scream if we didn't.
So it was a wonderful place to come and bring your family and your friends and just hang out and have this glorious California Busch Gardens experience?
Huell, my memory is so indelible with regards to how we spent our days here that I can truly say I wish it were back again.
Well, I gotta tell you, there are probably thousands of people out there watching this very program who remember Busch Gardens. Were you here when that was here?
I was not employed, but I was in the valley, and I actually came to visit as a child. But you know, even up to the last 10 years ago, we would have a family a week arrive asking, where is the Busch Gardens?
You're kidding, they would still come up.
Still come, up until
because
about
they
10
have been
years.
gone since 1979, and there were still people coming here looking for them.
That's correct.
Well, I've got a surprise for everybody because we have put our crack research team to work, and even though at first glance it appears as if those beautiful Busch Gardens are gone, that's not really the case. We have discovered that the original Busch Gardens are still here in California, and that's what this adventure is really all about. Well, as our adventure continues, we're now on Busch Garden Drive, but we are no longer in Van Nuys. We have come about 30 miles right to Pasadena. What are we doing in Pasadena looking for Busch Gardens?
Because we're here because this is the origin of the original Busch Gardens.
The original Busch Garden.
Exactly. Mr. Anheuser-Busch, the man who founded it, was named Adolphus Busch, and he bought a property here in his retirement years. He bought 32 acres. And it was his overall plan to develop a beautiful garden, not only for his family and his children, but for the general public.
So this was back in
1903 is when he first settled here in Pasadena, and he hired people from Scotland and Portugal who were experts and brought them here to begin the process of developing the Busch Gardens.
The Busch Gardens. Now, was it all back in here? You're talking about 30 acres?
32 acres that encompassed from Orange Grove Boulevard all the way to the Arroyo Canyon down below on the westerly side from where we're standing.
So this was a huge garden.
It was well, you had to have a full day to see it all, and then after you have done that, you'd want to come back next week to see more of it.
So it was kind of like was it literally open to the public? Was it free to the public? What did he do this for?
He did this because he was a good citizen. He was a rich man. He had wealth beyond his means to spend fast enough, obviously. He was retired, found Pasadena a beautiful place to live, and he wanted to put something of a civic nature here that people would remember, and the culture of Pasadena would be embellished by his structure of the Busch Gardens.
Was it free to the public?
Yes, it was. In the big well, when I say big, I mean big attendance. It was second only to the attendance at the Rose Bowl, the Tournament of Roses parade.
You're kidding.
I kid you not.
I've never heard of this before. Now, what's interesting about this, we are standing, I mean, there are little bits and pieces of this left, starting right here with this beautiful entranceway right here.
That's the one of the two remaining pedestals that mark the main entrance to the lower gardens. And behind us, we have the original structure of the cactus area, which was on the opposite side. The pedestal is missing from here.
So these are the original cactus.
You're looking at cacti here and trees that were here at the turn of the century.
Now, this isn't Mr. Busch standing out here to greet us, is it?
No, it's Mr. Vandale.
Well, nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
This is where you live.
Yes, I've lived here about 28 years.
And you have invited us, let's walk on in here, come on in, Cameron, to walk down this little path, because basically this was part of the original Busch Gardens.
This particular walk path has been here for as long as I've been here.
Wow.
Now, when I got here, it was covered in dirt, and I dug it out. But
and these cactus have been here all of this time. These were original cactus.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, they were here when I moved here.
Now, did you always, from the time you moved here, know the story about the Busch Gardens?
Not when I first moved here. I just was, the name is all I was aware of.
But you didn't know you were living on part of the Busch Gardens.
Not when I first moved here. I learned it after that. And,
so basically we're talking about the original walk path right here that people would have come in. This would have been one of the entrance ways to the lower garden.
Exactly. It's one of the links where it couples further below to others. Remember, these are now private properties, but back then it was a smooth action for you to just walk about on these various walkways. Every one of these stones that are here now were here 101 years ago in the same spot.
In the original Busch Gardens.
That's correct.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to come in.
My pleasure, and it was nice to meet you.
This is nothing compared to the hundreds of thousands of people that used to be tromping through here every day.
I'm sure that's true.
Thank you very much. And let's take one more look, because this is what remains on this particular corner, this tree and these cactus, what remains of the original Busch Gardens.
It'll grab
Sir?
you. Watch getting too close to the cactus. It's not forgiving.
It'll grab you.
It'll do it.
Was this all part of the lower garden right here?
Yes, indeed. All of the stonework that you can see behind on my right.
But none of these houses were here. This was all just an open garden area.
Exactly.
Here.
This is not a house.
He owned all of this land.
Exactly.
Now, I have a feeling this might be part of the original garden.
You have that right nailed on the head.
What is this?
This is a perpetual fountain that's brought water from a natural source for all the time that it's been here, and it was structured originally with a wooden hut on the top of the stonework that
right
you
up
see.
here.
Above that, there was a hut with a thatched roof.
Now, what was that for?
Well, it was a play place for the children. You just walk up and stand aside, have your picture taken, and so forth. But in time, it became decayed and it was taken away.
But isn't it nice that the people who ended up buying this piece of the land and building this house kept the original fountain?
They inherited this, and as long as I've been here, this water's been running constantly. And underground, there's a tube that takes the water out and down into the arroyo.
Boy, this is beautiful. And I guarantee you, 9.999 people out of 10 who come by this have no idea what the history of this fountain was.
Until your program, I can say this frankly, this has never been done before. And the revelation of what you're about to see is even grander by all means.
Okay, now we're at the intersection of Busch Garden Court and Busch Garden Drive. And again, I'm kind of lost if you didn't know what you were looking for, because there are houses all through this area now.
Currently, they are private properties, but back then, in this lower area, there was a huge pond that had swan and ducks and a fountain that was pumped up in the center, probably 30 feet in the air, cascading down all the day long.
Now that's gone.
That's all gone. In place, we have homes now.
Now there's a lot of stonework here. Is this looks all original all up in here?
What you're seeing is this. The stones were actually free because they came from the riverbed of the Arroyo Seco just to our west. And the artifacts that you are looking at were put together by meticulous craftsmen that came over from Europe, and they used mortar to cement each one in a perfect row. And all of this stonework that you're now seeing goes back to the turn of the 20th century.
Now, was there a road down here like there is now?
Not a paved road. It was a pathway that was probably granite, because underneath this area is pulverized granite, basically.
So the pathway would have gone right here beside this wall.
That's right. People were walking downward into the lower Busch Gardens and seeing everything you're seeing here today.
Now we've come back behind one of the houses here just off the street because, well, here's another one of these beautiful, natural, flowing stone fountains that I guess you're telling us are original.
You got to imagine the time spent by the original craftsmen to do all of this. It's almost like building the pyramids in a way. And to date, after 100 and some odd years, every piece that you see here is in the same position as constructed.
So this was, he would just have fountains coming down off of all of these hills with all this water and all of this rock.
There's a number of underground streams in this area because below us is the river. So the natural flow is on plateaus underground.
Perfect place for fountains.
Exactly, and you're going to see several more before we complete our tour.
Now, Mark, you're the new homeowner here. When you bought this house, did you know what you were getting into as far as history was concerned?
When I went into escrow on the property, then the neighbors started telling me about the history and whether I was familiar with Busch Gardens, and growing up in the valley, I knew Busch Gardens as a child in Van Nuys at the original Anheuser-Busch plant.
But you had never heard of these Busch Gardens.
I had never heard of these Busch Gardens botanicals.
You didn't know you were going to be living in Busch Gardens.
I did not. It was a novelty to have the street name, but then when I found out the history, it was even more so.
Now, is this original back here?
This retaining wall you see up here is not original, but from what I had heard, there was a little observation point up here. So in the whole Busch Garden plot, there's all this original stonework. I wanted to create another observation point above the property and try to create the old feeling of Busch Garden with all this original stonework.
So you were kind of continuing on the tradition.
Absolutely, restoring it as it may have been back then and trying to create the same flavor or feeling, but in an updated style.
Now we're doing a little bit of archaeological work here, Ray. Tell us what it is that we're walking on now and how it came to be rediscovered.
This, in times past, was a place where the people who came here could walk by and see the plantings in those left-hand side openings. There were planters here for all sorts of exotic plants. And these are, we're on one of 3 separate walkways, all of which 2 years ago was nothing more than one slippery slope of vegetation and soil.
So this had all been covered in.
Exactly. None of this was actually visible, only a green slope.
So how did it reappear?
Well, the owner of the property, Mr. Staub here, has spent a good deal of his own personal time and money to resurrect this fine piece of old Busch Gardens.
Look at this. You got a path up here. You've got another path down here. And this would have wound all back in here through all of these trees.
Exactly.
I guess just over the years, these things just got covered over. The people didn't really need rocks out here on the side of the hill.
It was almost as though the man bought the property on the Arroyo side and thought that this was his backyard and that's the way it would be.
Yeah.
Until I came along and said, Mr. Staub, I think that there's artifacts below that you have not yet seen and uncovered.
So you just started digging, and this would have been a planter right here.
Right there.
With a big tree, or this was another planter right here.
Some of the holes, if we wanted to dig down there, we'd probably find a pot embedded below there.
So there are planters all up and down here.
That's right. And everywhere you look is the artistry of those craftsmen that came from Europe, never to be seen again in our time.
We're now on South Arroyo Boulevard, and Ray, this is what's interesting about this. Everything on this side of the street, everything on this side of the street was all part of the Busch Gardens.
It starts at Orange Grove Boulevard and went down to the Arroyo Seco River. And the street we're on right now, I think, is one of the loveliest in the state of California.
Now, this is what's really interesting. You brought us here because you said this was part of the original Busch Gardens. I see no connection whatsoever.
The original Busch Gardens artifact that we're looking at is called the Grecian pergola. It's made up of vertical columns that are about 10 feet in height.
Right here.
And this is the original stonework that you're seeing encompassing a 180-degree arc.
So this makes an arc?
That's correct.
Back behind here.
All the way around until it's facing south.
Now it's become a house now.
Well, the house starts on the southern edge of where the pergola began. And it was a very difficult property to develop because it's a triangular shape, and behind it is almost a sheer drop into the canyon. Well, everybody stopped to see the beauty of the flowers that came over the top of the wooden structure that you now see here. All of this is an original post going into the ground and has not moved an eighth of an inch in 110 years.
Wow, and it was called the
Grecian pergola.
And now it's a private home.
Exactly.
Well, we're ending up here on Madeline Drive, and I have absolutely no idea what to expect. Ray has brought us to this very interesting looking location, and whatever it is, can we go in there, Ray?
We should.
Whatever it is behind this gate and this little house out here right on the side of the street.
Welcome to the old mill.
The old mill. Now this is certainly something that I was not expecting to see in Busch Gardens. What is the story on the old mill?
Well, this became one of the major tourist attractions here in Busch Gardens because it's a replica of a home that was seen in the old Grimm's fairy tales when he was a child. And he built this on his property basically for children to enjoy, and the size of the windows and the doorway will give you some idea that it's just a little bit shrunk down from a normal size home.
Now this lady right here, I assume you live here. We just kind of walked in on your property, but your name is?
Jackie Coulette.
Well, tell us what it's like to live in this house and what you think it was built for. What was the history of it? Because I know you've probably told this story 1,000 times.
Yes, and I've had to sort of correct it over the years. It wasn't built as early as I originally thought. It was about 1910. A gentleman who's been doing some research on the gardens, he has found an article from the LA Times from 1910 which discusses the building of it. And the article included a comment from Busch that he really wanted a place where he could take his cronies and they could smoke cigars and play cards. And it was just one room at that time and this long, tall column. And then also they said that it was an operating mill, that there was mechanism in it for grinding.
Well, was it ever used? Was it ever
so.
used as part of the garden itself? I mean, it sat on the garden.
Right. And in fact, I used to have a neighbor who died last year at 99, who remembers as a child on Sunday afternoon walking through the gardens. It was a thing to do after church. And so lots of people then knew the gardens.
Well, you live, can we walk just a little bit down here? Come on, yes. Cameron, and look at this, because you live in look at this wonderful little space that you live in down here. You're just kind of tucked away down here. And I mean, no one would even know that you were here. And here's one of your fountains here, and your house and the rock walls. This is really a neat place.
Yes, it is. It's a very special place. Children love it. As Ray was saying, children, they love coming here. And even children who are fighting, I've had them walk up the path arguing with each other. They get here to the house and all of a sudden, heaven.
Do you ever wonder what it must have been like when it was originally built out here without any other houses around it?
Right, absolutely. And the original house had a thatched roof. Wow. So it really was like an old English mill house.
Well, you're living in part of California history right here.
Yes, I am part of California history. I've been here 31 years.
In this house?
Yes, I never dreamed I'd be here that long.
There are relics everywhere. Jackie has brought us next door to her neighbor's house right across the fence from the beautiful mill house, because Jackie, you wanted to get us up here on this old bridge.
Yes, I wanted you to take a look at how it was built so that it looks like logs.
And this
and
is
very
part
natural.
of the garden.
Part of the original gardens. I have pictures that show this bridge. There used to be one on my property behind the house, and there was a great big pond there where my terrace is. Then the water came down over the wheel, the water wheel, and then through my ponds, and then under this bridge down to where the swimming pool is now.
So right over here where the swimming pool is now, and Ray is sitting beside the pool resting because he's given us a full tour here today, this used to be a pond in the original garden.
That's right. And then the water went from the pond down into the arroyo.
Wow, this is just amazing.
This is my next door neighbor, Lion Nicholson.
Heidi, we just kind of came in on you like we did on everybody else today, but you've just lived here a couple of years.
Yes.
Did you really know much about what you were getting into?
No, Jackie was the one who first introduced us to it.
And
it's
what
lovely.
what do you think about this
Oh,
bridge?
we love it.
And
It's lovely. Our children, my son loves it. My husband loves it. We love this house.
it's a very peaceful place, especially when you think back to how it all started.
Yeah.
And how long's the pool been there?
Probably about 15 years. And when it was built, the owner of the property then did not know that there had been a pond, and the workers dug down 2 feet and hit concrete.
From the original bottom of the original pond.
That's right. And they had to dig all of that concrete out before they could build the pool.
You know, this is amazing because I bet you every hillside, every yard, every front and backyard in this whole neighborhood has got relics
Yes,
somewhere.
all of them. All up and
Yes.
down the hillside here. And down here by the arroyo as well.
It's all buried treasure.
And all the pathways that just suddenly end at a fence or at a building or at a tree, you know, they're just pathways all over.
Huell, do you think you've discovered a piece of California gold here in Pasadena?
I think we have found a big piece of California's gold. We didn't know that any of this was here, and I think that really points this up. It was started back in
1905 was formally open to the public, and it ceased being a public attraction in 1938.
Well, the original Busch Gardens isn't here, but in a funny kind of in a very obscure way, it still is here. We have found bits and pieces of it all over this part of these 32 acres here in Pasadena, so that even though the formal gardens, which were so beautiful and started by old Adolphus Busch, are still here in memories, in pictures, in postcards, and up and down these streets, these sidewalks, and in people's backyards. It was a surprise to me. It's a surprise to everybody. This wonderful, hidden, and now newly discovered part of California's gold. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed our visit to the original Busch Gardens in Pasadena. If you'd like to go on this adventure again, or share it with family or friends, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.